Welcome to this data pre-processing tutorial. Today I'm going to explain the pre-processing and cleansing steps that we go over when receiving any dataset before heading to the modeling phase. As you can see here, we have our data. It's a small dataset comprised of 4 columns. We have country, age, salary, and purchased. So you can understand that from this data, the company is trying to refine more its marketing strategies, and it's trying to do some analytics based on specific geographies and age and salary, whether there is a high probability or my product is going to be purchased in that region for that specific age and salary or not. So this is basically our business use case. Also, we can also determine from this small data set our independent variables from our dependent variables. So our independent variables are the first 3 columns, the country, age, and salary, and our dependent variable, the one which depends on a series of inputs, which are the country, age, and salary, whether this product is going to be purchased or not. So it's no and yes. So this form of data type is called categorical data. However, let's get started with our pre-processing steps. So the first step that we have to do is import our libraries. So the first thing that we do is that we import pandas, give it the alias PD, and we also import numpy, and we give it the alias NP. So you can see here that this step here is done. The second step that we need to do is to actually import the dataset that we're going to do our analysis on. So what I do here is that I declare a variable called dataset, and then I use pandas library, which has the alias of PD. And then this pandas library provides a function which is called read_CSV. So you can see here that it takes a lot of parameters, but one of the parameters that we're just going to supply is the file name itself, or the file path. And since we are working in the same directory as our dataset is located in, so I just supply the name of my CSV file, which is called data, as you can see here, .csv. Okay, we're still not finished. We need to separate our independent variables from our dependent variables. So what we do is that we declare a variable, which is called x, and then we take our imported dataset, and then we use a function. This function or method is called ilock, and what it does is that it filters my dataset from specific rows and columns. Okay, so take into consideration x here represents my independent variables. And the first parameter that this ilock function takes is the rows. And in my case, or in our case, I need all of the rows. So all of the rows are represented by this colon symbol. And then I want the first 3 columns. I want, as I can recall, the country and the age and the salary. So I choose them. And since the first column starts at index 0, I'm going to begin my choice of columns from the 0 index till 2. So here I chose the first 3 columns. And at the same time, I want to exclude the column name. So I say that I just want the values. Okay? Then, after filtering my dataset from all the columns and the rows that I need, I want to be able to transform this dataset or my independent variables into a data frame. So what happens here is that I overwrite X and use the pandas library data frame and supply it with x again. So please take the value of this x and transform it into a data frame. So x here is going to be filtered and is going to be transformed into a data frame. Okay, so let's clear here console, just remove all of the variables and run. So here I run the first two library imports, pandas and numpy, and then here the x now here has all of my independent variables. I also want to do the same for my dependent variable, which is the column which is called purchased. So what happens is here I filter my dataset using the ilog function. I choose all of my rows and I choose the third column, okay, which is my dependent column or dependent value. And then afterwards, I transform it into a data frame, same as you have done here in the previous steps. And it takes y. Okay, and also we need here to take the values. I want to exclude the column names. I just want to extract the values. Once you run these two lines together, what happens is that here x has your independent values and y here has your dependent variables and x here has your independent variables. Okay, then we're going to handle missing values. Opening our data set, you can see that the column age and the column salary have missing values. And there are a lot of strategies to deal with missing values. However, the strategy that we're going to use here is the mean strategy, in the way that I get the mean value of this column, and then I'm going to put this value or this missing cell with that mean value. And the same occurs for that age column. You get the mean of the age, and you also, and this value will be the value that will be given to all missing cells considering that specific column. So let's import our library, which will be able to handle missing values. So what happens here is I say from scikit-learn dot impute import our library, which is called simple imputer. So that's the first step. Then I'm going to declare a variable called imputer, and I'm going to use this imported library here and supply it with the inputs that it needs. So here we have a lot of inputs, but what we're going to supply is the missing underscore values and our strategy. So here, missing underscore values. Missing underscore values, since our data set is now transformed into pandas, so any missing value will have the value NaN. And how we demonstrate so is by writing np.nan. So this means that any missing cell which has the value NaN, this will be identified as a missing value. And then you choose your strategy to be the mean. Okay? So now you have initialized your simple imputer object. The next step that you want to do, fitting this simple imputer object, which is in the form of an imputer variable, on our independent data set. And I'm not going to apply it on my whole independent data set. It's only applied on the columns that demonstrate an integer value. So what happens here is that I use this imputer object, which now has the simple imputer object initialized with its inputs. And then I fit my simple imputer object to my data. And I'm going to choose specific columns because these specific columns, as I said, demonstrate integer values. So what happens is here, I take my X, which is my independent data set, and I filter it by the iLock function. I choose all of the rows, and then the columns is from 1 till 3. Here, I don't want index 0. I want index 1 and index 2. And 3 is included, but it's not within my range. So when you say 1 till 3, it's going to take the age and salary, excluding the purchased column. Okay? So this is why we have to, write the n plus 1. Okay, increase the index by 1, but it won't actually be taken into consideration. It will only take the second column, which is specified at index 1, and the third column, which is specified at index 2. After you have fit your simple imputer object on your independent variable dataset, what you want to do is to transform it. Okay, so what happens is that you take your independent variable and you take the columns, the integer columns, which have all of the rows, and the second and the third columns, and then you take this object. Now you have fit your simple imputer object on the data. Now you take it and then you say dot transform. Okay, and you take the same values again, the second and the third columns again. So you take all of the rows and you take second and the third column. So what here happens is that you're going to overwrite the initial values that you have, okay, and it's going to be overridden by new values. And these new values mean that the cells that had missing values, did not demonstrate any values, are going to now have the mean value for that specific column. So what happens when we run this block of code, everything is now executed. And then what we do is that we go to Variable Explorer and we see the changes that happen to X. And you can see here that column 1 and column 2, this one was the missing value, and that one in the age column was the missing value. So they have been substituted by the mean value of that specific column and the mean value of that specific column for this one. And, and if you have other columns that have missing values and they are of integer types, then this approach will be definitely applicable to it. Okay, so this tutorial basically helps you to import your dataset and to handle missing values if there are any. In the next tutorial, we're going to know how to deal with categorical values. So categorical values in our case are country and purchased. But we're going to deal specifically with country. Country here has many different values. It has, for example, France, Spain, and Germany. So we're going to know exactly how to make our model interpret these values without taking it as a categorical value in that shape. Okay, So please, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section and subscribe to my channel.